Welcome to The Big Read. For the next 2 months, the City of Annapolis is promoting a citywide reading of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The program is an initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts. Designed to restore reading to the center of American life and culture, The Big Read provides you with the opportunity to read and talk about a single book. Today's program is an introduction to The Big Read and The Great Gatsby. In the coming weeks, Annapolis Mayor Ellen Moyer and her guests will discuss the book in depth. Since its publication in 1925, Fitzgerald's masterpiece has become a touchstone for generations of readers and writers. Although The Great Gatsby runs to only 200 pages, there is no bigger read in American literature. We hope this program will inspire you to read and revisit this American classic, and join us in the weeks to come for The Big Read.
Hi, this is Mayor Ellen Moyer, working on our Big Read. You know, we are partnering with the National Endowment for the Arts and doing the Big Read, and this year's Big Read book is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I am so pleased to have with us today the award-winning author, TV person. You've done so much, Lailee, back to you. Tell us about all some of the exciting things that you've done. I know you were on the West Coast and you did a whole series of book and author programs.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Moyer, and thank you for having me to share the story of F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of the most widely studied novels in America today.
Yes.
I went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and that's really where I learned the craft of writing. And then I continued my studies in California, in San Francisco, at the College of Notre Dame de Namur, where I received a master's degree. But I was born in Washington, D.C., from two cultures in the family. My mother's Persian, and so my name, Lailee, is Persian.
Lailee.
Yes, and my father was McNair from 4 generations of the Navy. So in California, I was a print journalist and then a broadcast journalist for a long time on PBS. KCSM was the affiliate station, and I presented a book program reviewing authors.
For 10 years, almost 10 years.
15 years.
15 years.
Yes.
Wow. And then you came back to the East Coast.
Then I came home to Annapolis, Maryland, the state capital, and it reminds me of the days when I used to visit my grandparents on King George Street across from the Naval Academy.
Is that Admiral?
Yes, Admiral McNair actually was the 16th Superintendent of the United States Naval Academy, my great-grandfather.
Yeah. What a great experiences that you've had.
I'm very blessed to be here, and Annapolis is an enchanted city. It's improved much since Mayor Moyer has been here.
Well, thank you.
I'm particularly grateful for all you've done for Annapolis Arts Alliance, and I've seen throughout the United States how encouraging and understanding the culture of the arts, of poets, writers, sculptors, artists, really contributes to the vivacity of a city and brings out the diversity and in a sense, the richness of a city. So you've made what is an enchanted portside town into a much
well, thank you.
Deeper one.
And so let's talk about one of these authors and one of their books and the whole aspect of the art, if you will, not only of I call it an art in terms of reading because so many fewer people read now, but certainly the art of writing and developing the kinds of pictures in words that we can all respond to. And certainly, you know, our people who are watching us may not be familiar with The Great Gatsby. So let's talk about what this book really does. You know, why is it a classic? It is, it's been around for 80 years, so it has survived. And why?
I think that's a great question. Why is The Great Gatsby a classic? And I think first I would look toward the author, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and what was his goal? And F. Scott Fitzgerald, he actually attended Princeton University. His father was a Marylander, and he is a distant cousin of Francis Scott Key, who wrote the national anthem.
F. Scott. Francis Scott Key.
Exactly. And so F. Scott Fitzgerald, he was an expatriate in France. He actually wrote The Great Gatsby in France, and he was known to be a friend of Ernest Hemingway, a man who he greatly admired in his genius
Yes,
of
he
writing. So F. Scott Fitzgerald, it was his goal and purpose to write a novel that would be new, a novel that would represent, in a sense, the American legendary status of the United States, and in that he needed a character, and he created Jay Gatsby. And my thought is that he looked across the Atlantic, he was writing in Valescure, France, and he thought, how can Gatsby fit into this myth of the American dream, the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age? This was the social history behind which he was creating and putting Great Gatsby, Jay Gatsby, into. And I think he succeeded in creating a very finely written, edited novel, but with a legendary mythical character.
Well, one of the themes in the book is one of the songs that was very popular in the morning, in the evening, Ain't We Got Fun? How does that describe the Gatsby, or Jay Gatsby?
Well, Jay Gatsby achieved the American dream in terms of financial success, and the image of that dream was a beautiful palatial mansion, much like the gorgeous mansions and architecture of France, overlooking a beautiful green lawn, and then blue corrugated water, and of course a white sailboat in the distance. So he set him into this picture, and within that he wanted Jay Gatsby to represent hope. He wanted him to represent how you could achieve financial success during this time. Now he wanted also to represent the beauty of the landscape. He was very interested in France. He makes references in the novel to Cannes and Deauville, cities on the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, to show us a picture of what does the American dream look like. And Jay Gatsby was, in a sense, again, a myth that F. Scott Fitzgerald hoped would show the lavishness and the style and beauty that he was witnessing in France. So sort of a past European look, but with a modern American energetic twist. And actually he wrote, one short passage he wrote was, outside the wind was loud, there was a faint flow of thunder along the sound, all the lights were going on in West Egg now, the electric trains, men carrying, were plunging home through the rain from New York. It was the hour of profound human change, and excitement was generating in the air. So that was the Roaring Twenties.
That was the Roaring 20s, but part of the imagery is also very serene. You know, the water, the white sail, not many white sails, one. That's really very, very serene. And yet, the lavish parties that were given, they were not serene at all. So it's this contrast, really.
That's so true. There were these spectacular, elaborate celebrations driven to excess. So there was tea only served in sterling silver trays, and beverages poured into crystal, and women who wore long pearls and carried feathers and had sequin dresses. So here you had this style and beauty, and yet driven to excess came the shadow side of the story. That you could achieve legendary status, but not a legacy.
Okay, I think that's really a very important part of what you just said, because some people have said this was really a criticism of American society at the time. All the excitement, the change, and the feeling of change that was there that you just read about, and yet the excess. And the striving for excess, really, in terms of the lavish parties. Was he really, celebrating these? There's a contradiction in the book, I think. He's celebrating this and at the same time criticizing it.
I agree. I think that Jay Gatsby is a very sympathetic character, a character who wants to appear to be splendid, appear to have the graces and dignities of the old historic European style and have a lineage, but in fact he came by his money probably by bootlegging. He came by he wasn't really satisfied to be who he was. He was more interested to promote himself towards his love interest, Daisy Buchanan. And interestingly, I think in the novel, F. Scott Fitzgerald uses the symbolism of the water that really keeps them apart. And I think that one of the most profound passages, I think, in the novel is actually the final words of F. Scott Fitzgerald, the very final words of the novel, where the narrator, Nick Carraway, is describing this impossible dream. A dream, but an impossible dream. And he says, and as I sat there brooding on the old, unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in that vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So he is a boat against the current. He's not going to reach shore to this goal.
Let's take a break for a minute and then come back and examine how this book really relates to today's life here in Annapolis. We're back. Let's talk about some of the elements of the novel and how they may relate to Annapolis today. The water is one of the most important elements of this novel, and sailing, the water, the wind, is certainly applicable to, to us. He also, in this book, there's a lot of celebration. The dancing to the music of the Jazz Age was reminiscent of the fun, the pleasure, the celebration of the sky is the limit, the American dream. All of those things were wrapped up in this. And while it was a different age, it was 1920s, and that was a different age. Now we're, 80-some years later. But these elements still are very, very much related to the city of Annapolis in so many ways. And so let's discuss how this book maybe relates to us.
I think that's a wonderful point, how the city of Annapolis is very much a parallel to Long Island. And we look out over the bay and the sound of Long Island, seeing the very powerful image that F. Scott Fitzgerald uses in The Great Gatsby of the sailboat. The water is an extremely important image. It was the last words of F. Scott Fitzgerald in The Great Gatsby were a metaphor of a boat against the current. I think one of the most powerful images in the novel as well is the two characters, Jay Gatsby and his nemesis, Tom Buchanan, standing together, looking out from their palatial home. In this case, it was Tom Buchanan's palatial home, over the beautiful green lawns and the blue corrugated water. And here's how F. Scott Fitzgerald describes how this image, this picture that he paints, is the American dream, although both characters achieved it differently. This is what F. Scott Fitzgerald said. I went with them out to the veranda. He means Nick Carraway. So it's Nick Carraway on the veranda with Tom Buchanan and with Jay Gatsby. On the green sound, stagnant in the heat, one small sail crawled slowly toward the fresher sea. Gatsby's eyes followed it momentarily. He raised his hand and pointed across the bay. I'm right across from you. So you are. Our eyes lifted over the rose beds and the hot lawn and the weedy refuse of the dog days along shore. Slowly, the white wings of the boat moved against the blue, cool limit of the sky. Ahead lay the scalloped ocean and the abounding blessed isles. "There's sport for you," said Tom, nodding. "I'd like to be out there with him for about an hour." So there is this image of these two powerful men, one of lineage, one of legend. Both came by it differently. And Jay Gatsby's wish is to be Tom Buchanan, to have come from, I think F. Scott Fitzgerald learned when he was at Princeton, perhaps about those legends. So there the water is the main image there.
And the scenery and everything he again talks about has a serenity to it. But behind that is the tension between these two men. And Tom Buchanan is not, not billed as a very nice guy. So, what's the parallel between Jay Gatsby, the character, and Tom Buchanan? How different are they really? It is true that Tom Buchanan came from a privileged family. Jay Gatsby did not. Jay Gatsby became a very wealthy man, not legally. So, what are the differences that you would think between the two characters?
Well, I think that's a very significant point of the novel, the difference between these two characters. And Tom Buchanan, he represents perhaps what F. Scott Fitzgerald saw when he attended Princeton University, the legends and legacies of New York. New York was 20 minutes away from Long Island, where the novel is set. And Tom Buchanan is described as F. Scott Fitzgerald, along with his wife Daisy, as being careless. Yes. So while having inherited a legacy, he also was not necessarily a responsible person. And he was more concerned with his immediate needs. And I think F. Scott Fitzgerald was trying to put this in a social context of looking at America as how can the individual succeed? When do we, what kind of success do we breed a social responsibility if we're only concerned with ourselves and our wealth? So there, Tom Buchanan is certainly not concerned with social service or community. He's concerned with his own small circle. And likewise, actually, Jay Gatsby is so interested to emulate Tom and to be welcome into the elite, which he's not. He's kept from that shore. He also really fails. And in a sense, it is a mythical, there is a myth that this is the American dream, and yet, taken to excess, it fails. It doesn't show enough social concern.
Well, certainly Tom Buchanan did not, and it was a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, how do I feel now about whatever. But he did not have what Jay Gatsby wanted and never achieved. Jay Gatsby had this hope for something that he imagined was just wonderful, and of course that really had to do with his lost love of Daisy Buchanan, and he never achieved that. However, looking ahead to a desire that and a passion, that he had for something different that he never could have. So, is there a message in this?
I think there is. I think that the message is that the deeper relationship that Jay Gatsby had within himself, that is very sympathetic, is that he wanted to improve himself. And this is the piece of the American dream that we admire in Jay Gatsby, and that the narrator Nick Carraway admired, even though he disdained.
Originally.
Exactly, disdained it immensely. And I think what's also interesting is that the author F. Scott Fitzgerald says we cannot recapture the past. And he's set these two characters, one who wants to be part of a legacy, in almost a European-styled environment. And I think that Fitzgerald was tremendously influenced by France. There are a number of references in terms of art and architecture to French styles, whether it's Marie Antoinette music rooms. And I think that, as we were speaking earlier, a little bit about Annapolis and our community connection to both what is Annapolis today in terms of the dream of having a sailboat and a beautiful home with a beautiful lawn. We also are set in a little bit of that past picture. We have our beautiful state capitol building and its architectural presence. We have colonial historic homes where important people, signers of the Declaration of Independence, made their points and really sacrificed immensely.
And their homes are still here.
And their homes are still here. And we also have on the grounds of the United States Naval Academy 3 French architects from the École des Beaux-Arts who actually came here to those grounds and developed those structures. So like Jay Gatsby and Tom Buchanan, there's a little bit of a past European history that one tries to live up to and fit into, and then there's a little bit of how do we do this today. So these 2 characters really were the individuals pursuing their own, in a sense, their own concerns. They were I think it was the American dream about how an individual can succeed and improve themselves. That's what Jay wanted to do. But he wasn't satisfied with who he was, and that's where I think he went to excess. To improve yourself is very good, but to improve yourself to the point that you're not satisfied with who you are, and that he wanted to be Tom Buchanan is not good. And of course he wanted Daisy.
He wanted Daisy, yeah. So this novel is really timeless. And the characters that are portrayed in this book, their concerns, you know, how to feel comfortable with yourself and in the society in which you are themes really that have gone on for thousands of years. Different settings, different places, whatever, you know, well, some things just never change. And so a reading of this book by F. Scott Fitzgerald really brings to light a lot that we have to deal with now. Each one of us has to deal with now. Doesn't have to deal with, but
I think that you presented that exactly in the image that F. Scott Fitzgerald would have wanted it to be stated. And particularly in your situation, being a mayor of the capital, in the capital city.
Very special capital city.
Annapolis, Maryland. It's a very powerful opportunity that you have, well, you've really blessed all of us with your appreciation of the culture, the beautification, as well as all the other details that are very serious of community interest. But I think that by taking a look and reflecting on the meaning and purpose of Annapolis and how the arts and literature can help us to develop our character. This is a book that offers a wonderful discussion to be concerned with self-improvement like Jay Gatsby, but not driven to excess, to show social responsibility.
Well, that's a really good ending to our description of the Great Gatsby, if you will. A book that, you know, this city was known as the Athens of America. It was the cultural center, and reading really helps us to begin to look at things we might not have thought about if we hadn't taken the time to actually examine. And so, you know, we're really pleased to be able to participate in the National Endowment of the Arts Big Read program, and this year's Great Gatsby. And I'm going to thank you so much for being here to share with the audience and to share with me your thoughts about this very, very special book.
Thank you, Your Honor.